If you've seen my review for Jena 20, you know that recently I tried the Napoleonic 20 system by Victory Point Games, and I really liked it. I loved the idea of having the fate of Europe in my hands and being able to determine that fate with just 20 counters on the board. So cool. And then the game was so smooth and it played so fast, just a lot of fun. So I decided to explore the series more, and I'm pretty serious about this. I decided to try not just one more game, but 4. And so I picked up Dresden 20, Waterloo 20, Austerlitz 20, and Busaco 20. And as you can imagine, I'm going to report about each of these games in my reviews. So you're gonna have a mini series, a Marco 20 series of reviews. In the reviews about these games, I'm not going to go over the series rules again. You can find them in my review for Jena 20 if you don't know them yet, if you're not familiar with the system. Also, you may have a strange sense of deja vu right now. Well, that is because I'm using this same segment here to open all of my 4 reviews of these Napoleonic 20 games. I don't think I need to film myself 4 times repeating more or less these same things, and you know, less time for filming, more time for playing. Today's review is for Austerlitz 20, a game that covers the stunning victory achieved by Napoleon's army in December 1805 against a coalition of anti-French forces. In this review, for short, I will call them the Russian army and therefore the Russian player. This game is not going to be republished next year as part of the GMT Fading Glory project, so if you want to play this game in the next future or in any foreseeable future really, you still have to knock on Victory Point Games door. For today, however, let's just take a look at the game and see how it plays. Like in other games of the series, here you have a deck of random cards, and each player will draw one at the beginning of his player turn and will apply the result. Some events will apply to the Russian player when he draws them, some to the French player when he's the one drawing the card, some will apply just to the player that draws the card. And it seems to me that this deck favors the French player quite a bit. Maybe it's just my impression, but there are just so many good events for the French player and so many bad things for the Russian player. Also, you have the Son of Austerlitz, which is a phenomenal card. Look how good it is. It can cancel any fog effect. I'll explain later what those are. It can give all the French units +1 movement, +1 combat, and the French player chooses 2 of these, not 1. Even better is the fact that at the beginning of the game, the French player will take this card out of the deck, will also get other 2 random cards, will shuffle these 3 cards, and will draw 1 randomly, and will be able to use that card at any time during the game instead of drawing a random card from the deck. So actually the French player has 33% chances to start the game with this card already in his hand and be able to play it at any time. Otherwise the card will be there, but trust me, either way, especially if the Son of Austerlitz is already there, things are gonna be hard for the Russian player. I love the map, I really do. I think it looks different from many other Victory Point Games maps, but it really gives me the sense of this frozen, snow-covered landscape. Important features are this road here, which connects 2 opposite sides of the map, but does not connect objective axis directly. There's only one here, so more or less the players will be moving back and forth and then taking detours to reach the area where the majority of the objective axis is. Also, you have here a river that cuts the map in 2. There are some frozen ponds there, and of course this river creates limitations in terms of movement, so maybe the players will just avoid this area altogether and try to concentrate their action here where there are more interesting things going on. And in the middle of the map, attracting a lot of attention, very important, is the Pratzenheights that, of course, are surrounded by upward slopes, so this is a very good area if you're trying to defend against your enemy, and the way in which players will try to exploit that position will influence many things in the game. The position of the objective axis seems to me to give an advantage to the French player. The French player needs to defend this hex here, which is pretty far from the area where the Russian player will be entering. This other hex here, still far, and also a fortified hex. This hex here also has defensive bonus. So it seems to me that these axes are going to be easier for the French player to defend than the objective axis for the Russian player, which are this one, and this one. And of course, if a player is occupying any and all of the objective axis of the opponents during a night turn, then the opponent's morale is lowered. So it is gonna be easier, it seems to me, for the French player to take control of these axes, so some of these at least, and to damage the morale of the Russian player. A new type of terrain that you have in this game is the frozen pond, and the ice on these frozen ponds is really not too thick. When you're moving into a frozen pond, the first thing is that you had to stop immediately. Then at the end of the movement phase of either player, you will have to roll a die to see if the ice breaks. If you roll a 1, the ice breaks and a fresh unit will route and a routed unit will break. That die roll is modified by enemies' zones of control, because the enemies are using their artillery, just firing at the ice, trying to break it under your feet. So each unit that is projecting a zone of control on a frozen pond where you need to take that die roll will subtract a -1 from that die roll. In this case, for example, this unit will have a -2 when checking whether the ice is breaking or not. An interesting option you have in this game is to use fog. If you decide to use fog, fog will occur during every morning turn and every evening turn. When fog occurs, there are no zones of control, so units can sneak past each other. All the units have their movement allowance reduced to 1, and more importantly, there are no combined attacks. All attacks are selective. So during a regular turn, for example, this unit will have to attack all these enemy units combined, so it would be 5 against 6, pretty bad for this unit. However, if this is a fog turn, then this unit can attack these other units selectively, so it can be 5 against 2. So as you can see, it's a pretty different situations. And if you're using fog, half of the turns will use that rule and only half will play normally. This is the historical scenario, with the majority of the French army pretending to be leaving the area and definitely not caring about the Pratzen Heights, but in reality being ready to counterattack as soon as the Russian army bites the bait. And here, in fact, you have several forward Russian units that can be attacked by the French army if the French player decides to start moving down fast, maybe using the special card, the Son of Austerlitz. So the French player can be able to do some damage here before the Russian player is able to react and to bring in reinforcements. The Russian player, however, has the option of defending in this area here, which is good, and also the Russian player may probably want to do that because these are axes that he needs to defend from the French player. Overall, this is a nice scenario. I really like it. It has a really nice flow. Another option you have is to play the standard game scenario, which is the one that tries the most to reproduce the effect of surprise that Napoleon's plan had on the Russian army. What happens here is that even if you're not using the fog of war rule, the French player still sets up first and sets up with his units face down. Then the Russian player is allowed to look at some of these units, and based on that limited knowledge, he decides where to set up his own units. Differently from the scenario I showed you before, in fact, here you do not have a standard setup. You do not have the exact axis in which you need to place your units. You only have parameters that tell you the general areas in which certain groups of units need to be placed. So what you have here is not the standard setup for this scenario, but only one of the many possible setups that the players can come up with. This other setup here, looking pretty different, well, it's perfectly legal, completely acceptable within the same parameters of the standard game scenario. And here's just another variation on the same thing, with the French army here more dispersed, some units trying to walk around the Pratzen Heights, with the Russian player more concentrated on defending the central area, with just some units deployed here to try to intercept these other units. Still perfectly legal, not another scenario, just a different way of setting up the standard game scenario that I showed you earlier. And then you have a what-if scenario, which explores what might have happened if Napoleon had decided to keep control of the Pratzen Heights area and if the battle had occurred one day earlier. In this scenario, the Russian player has to set up his units on these hexes here. It's a predetermined thing, there are no choices here. However, the Russian player then receives several reinforcements in later turns. Actually, 2 units will enter the game during turn 1, so at least that will create a little bit of unpredictability because those can be sent in different locations. The French player has only 1 unit that needs to go in a predetermined hex, which is this one. All other all other units can be set up anywhere in this area here, in between those 2 X rows. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of possibilities in which the units can be set up, and each different setup will lead to a different series of events, a huge replayability coming from the variable setup for the French player. The French player actually can be very mean and start by setting up a unit in each of the 3 objective axes belonging to the Russian player. That means that now the Russian player really has to rush in and try to dislodge some of those units from there. Otherwise, if the situation is still like this at the beginning of the night turn, the Russian player is going to lose 3 points of morale, 1 for each objective axe which is controlled by the French player. The key word here is replayability. The game is just as nice, smooth, fast-paced, we just has many hard decisions to be made like the other games that I tried in the series, but here you have so many more options, different experiences that you can create with the components you find in the Ziploc bag. 3 scenarios and 2 of them can be set up in vastly different ways. The fog option is huge. Playing with or without it really changes things completely. The fog option just by itself doubles the number of scenarios that you have. It just seems a good investment for your money because just so many different games that you can have here. If you're planning to try one game in the Napoleonic 20 series, I think this could be a good choice because the game really can showcase how many different things the Napoleonic 20 system can achieve. Otherwise, it's just a good game. Personally, it is my favorite game in the series. Okay, I only tried 3 of them, but I don't know, golden medal in a competition with 3 players, still not bad. Good game, highly recommend it.